Welcome to the Trevor Meyer Show. I'm Trevor Meyer, and today we are going to rank the Rocky and Creed films. Now, this is going to be a ranking of 12 films. How is that possible, you may ask? There are only 9 in the series so far, but there are 3 alternate cuts that I'm also going to be ranking. So, 9 theatrical cuts plus 3 alternate cuts gets us to 12. So, at the bottom of the list, number 12, Rocky 5. I know, this was probably an obvious pick. However, I think that it's not as bad as people think. If Rocky 5 is the worst movie in your franchise, you're doing pretty well, I think. And one of the reasons why I feel that it didn't work is because they were trying, I understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to recapture the magic of the original. They got the original director back. They put it in the same location as the original. They tried to imitate the look of the original. They have the costumes from the original. What could go wrong, right? Here's the thing. Rocky is a very inspirational film. It's not as inspirational if you rewind it. You understand? If you take that movie and play it backwards, it's incredibly depressing. And that's what Rocky 5 did. He starts at the top of the world and rewinds back to being a nobody on the street of Philadelphia. So, while it tried to recapture the magic of the original, the spirit of it was wrong. And there's a lot of other surface details, like the rap music didn't quite fit. It was popular at the time, early 90s. Always makes me think of the Ninja Turtles movies, especially Vanilla Ice. Ice Baby? No. Ninja rap. Go ninja, go! That's the vibe I got. It's the worst acting in the series. It's the worst dialogue in the series. It's Stallone's worst performance as Rocky in Rocky 5. He's playing a caricature of Rocky, it seems. He's like, I didn't know and I made mistakes and I need to wise up. And it's just wrong. It's everything is wrong about it. But it's got the one scene that almost is guaranteed to bring me to tears. And it's the shining light in all of Rocky 5. It's the scene when he goes to the gym and he has a flashback to Mickey. That gets me every time. So, it's in last place, but I don't hate it. All right, number 11, Rocky 5 Workprint. The Rocky 5 Workprint. What is that, you might be asking? How can I get my hands on it? Well, upside, it's on YouTube for free for now. Downside, the quality is very poor. Very poor. It was never meant to be released. It was what they were looking at behind the scenes before they finalized the edit and put it in theaters, all right? And I gotta say that aside from the very poor quality, the sound quality is actually pretty good on the Workprint. The video quality is terrible. But if there was like a high definition version of that, it would be far superior to the theatrical cut of Rocky 5. The music is totally different. No rap music. It works in, this was probably a temp track, but during one of the montages, they work in music from Rocky 4, as in the Vince DiCola score. Love that. And the acting is better, I think, because it was production audio. So that was going to get replaced anyway when they overdubbed it. And maybe that was why the acting didn't live up to the previous films in the franchise. But yeah, I think that it's more subtle and it's a little bit darker. And I know it's weird that I like that because I said that 5 was too depressing, but the Workprint version commits to it. Whereas I feel like after test screenings, maybe they knew that it was too depressing. So they tried to lighten it up and add some camp and humor to it. And that's not in the original cut, which I respect because it's more true to what they were actually trying to do. And no, spoiler alert, Rocky does not die at the end. That was in the script. They had already nixed that by the time they shot it. But the fight is re-edited at the end. It's all different. So Of the two versions, the Workprint is definitely superior, and I wish that there was a high definition version of it. Maybe someday. All right. Number 10, the theatrical cut of Rocky 4. Now, this is some people's favorite Rocky movie, and some people are really attached to the theatrical cut over the director's cut, for example. I never really liked Rocky 4. It felt like it was moving away from what made the franchise good. It felt like it was moving away from what Rocky was meant to be from the beginning. It had a very 80s feel to it, and it made me understand why Rocky 5 was desired by some, why they felt they needed to move in that direction, why Stallone felt they needed to move in that direction, because Rocky 4, I really started to feel that it was like a TV show by that point. Like, it's just another adventure with Rocky. It has nothing to do with his original story. The first three movies stand on their own as a trilogy, and Rocky 4 was just a Cold War standalone film. It was a cheesy 80s action film. That's my cat, Kirk. Named after James Tiberius Kirk. Cameo. I already had to cut part of this out. I try not to do any edits in these anymore, but hey, buddy, what's up? I'm shooting here. Oh, there he goes. He's got the zoomies. All right, so Rocky 4, it felt like it had nothing to do with the original Rocky story, and that's why I didn't like it. It felt like an over-the-top music video, an action film, and the robot, man, I hate the robot too. And it didn't work for me. It was too cheesy. It was too weird. He single-handedly ended the Cold War with his little speech at the end. It wasn't for me, all right? And it's still kind of not. We'll get to that in a second with the theatrical versus the director's cut. All right, so number 9, Rocky 3. Now, I used to like this one a lot more. In retrospect, it's a little bit silly. Clubber Lang is possibly the least interesting villain. Even Drago became a more interesting villain as the series went on. And even just as a presence, Drago was a more interesting character. Mr. T is just kind of a jerk, and he's got no dimensionality. He's not like Apollo Creed where you can see his point of view. He's just kind of a caricature again. And the fight with Hulk Hogan, I always just roll my eyes with that one because it is legitimately, like from a screenwriting standpoint, that's Rocky's everyday life now. So, whereas before, he was finding people to shake down for money on the docks or being a janitor at the gym, now he's a fighter and he does these charity things, and that's his life now. But it just feels like filler to me. It feels like a silly sequence it's more commercial. It's more commercial. But I do love the idea of it kind of rounding out the original trilogy in that now Rocky is in Creed's position. He's the one who is slacking off and some young underdog comes and takes him out. And the idea that he's struggling with who he is and whether or not he's really a winner and starts to just give us little hints of what's going to happen later in the series where he's starting to question what happens when all this money goes away? And Adrian's speech suggests that when they're through chanting your name, all it's going to be is us. All right? So the money, it's all going to go away eventually. Eventually, all of this is going to end. And that's great foreshadowing in retrospect. So Rocky 3 ranks pretty low on this list, unfortunately, because it's nice, but it's a little thin. There's not much there. There's not much substance. There's not much to say. Number 8, Rocky, the original Rocky. Why? Why so low? Number 8 out of 12? Well, here's the thing. I used to like it a lot more. But now, as an adult, I see that so much of the movie hinges on the love story between Rocky and Adrian. And so much of the love story hinges on one particular sequence in the film that, in retrospect, as an adult, is really freaking creepy. All right? So, the whole first date between Rocky and Adrian is so hard to get through now because it starts out with her being coerced by her abusive brother, Paulie. Thanksgiving is ruined. Her dinner is ruined. Rocky takes her out on a date. They don't get any food. They just go skating, and Rocky talks only about himself and never asks him any questions, never asks Adrian any questions about her, and then lures her into his apartment where she tries multiple times to leave, says she's uncomfortable. He physically blocks her exit and won't let her go until he can kiss her. That's not good. Now, I understand what he was going for. The point of the scene, just to add some nuance to it, is that he was trying to demonstrate that he was not a threat. So he trapped her to prove that he wasn't going to hurt her. But the trapping in itself is wrong, just so we're clear. So young men watching this movie, that's not how you're supposed to act on a first date. So I know I'm focusing disproportionately on this one scene, but because the entire story, the heart of the movie kind of revolves around that scene, it played a lot better when I was in high school, when I didn't know anything about the world. Now I'm like, boy, their relationship has some rocky foundation, no pun intended. And it's just blind luck that it actually wound up being kind of a good relationship down the line. So, that being said, get that out of the way. The story itself is very compelling. The idea of somebody getting an opportunity, at first turning it down because he didn't have any self-esteem, and then agreeing to it. And the structure is really interesting. The first half is a love story. The second half is more of an action movie, action, sports. Kind of like Titanic is the first half is a love story. The second half is a disaster movie. Avatar, the first half is a love story. The second half is a war movie. So it's got a familiar structure. Call to action doesn't happen until halfway through the movie, which is kind of, a weird move from a screenwriting standpoint, but not bad. It's not a bad move. It's unique. So it's almost like there's two distinct movies going on. And the whole setup where we're just seeing Rocky in his, it's a day in the life of Rocky. It's almost literally a day in the life of Rocky at the beginning of the movie. So he starts out fighting. He goes home. He goes to sleep. He wakes up. He goes to see Adrian. He goes to the dock. He comes back and sees Adrian again on his way home, I think. And then he goes to the bar. He walks Marie home. And then back to bed. So they literally follow him throughout an entire day to show you what his life is like before he gets the opportunity. But so much there, the speech with Mickey, it's a living, it's a waste of life. And how when Mickey, all of a sudden he's get this opportunity, and then Mickey comes and says, hey, I want to help you. And he's like, well, you didn't want to help me before. All of a sudden, these people come out of the woodwork. Paulie wants to help him all of a sudden. Everybody who treated him like garbage before is now being nice to him all of a sudden because he's got this opportunity. So, but classic film. It's because of the love story that I just, it's rough. It's rough to get through now. Number 7, Rocky 2. Some people think Rocky is better than Rocky 2. Some people think Rocky 2 is better than Rocky 1. They trade places. But I used to not like Rocky 2 at all when I was a teenager. When I was in high school, did I say Rocky 2? When I was in high school, I did not like Rocky 2. I thought it was boring. As an adult who has struggled with unemployment, with trying to get a desk job, having to settle for a factory job while, in the background thinking that I want to be doing something else that I'm really passionate about, like this, or writing novels or something like that, I could connect hardcore with Rocky 2 when I was unemployed. And the existential crisis that comes from what you're going to do with the rest of your life, just professionally, and where that's going to lead you. So I really connect with that. I think Apollo is a better character in the second movie because in the first one, it's a pretty simple tortoise and hare story where one of them is training really hard and the other one is not training at all because he's so overconfident. And this tortoise, walks right past him. He loses still, so maybe it's not the best analogy, but the point is, Apollo is overconfident, just like the hare, and because of that, he gets taken by surprise. Now, in Rocky 2, Apollo's back. It's personal. He wants revenge, all right? He wants to prove himself. He has something to prove. So it all comes together. Only downside to Rocky 2 is I'm not really a fan of the whole Adrian in a coma sequence. I think it goes on a little too long, although it does hit a little bit harder when you know that between Rocky 5 and Rocky Balboa, Adrian dies of cancer. And when I'm watching Rocky 2 and seeing Rocky by Adrian's bedside, you know, it evokes imagery in my head of what it must have been like when she had cancer. So it hits a little bit harder now. But that's where I put it at number 7. Number 6, Creed 3. Creed 3. The Creed movies, I have to say, are, in my opinion, mostly better than the Rocky movies. Not all the Rocky movies, and not all the Creed movies are better than all the Rocky movies, but on average, I think the Creed movies are of a higher quality than the Rocky movies. Possibly that's because of the period of time in which I am living. So the Rocky movies are old. They're from before I was born, most of them. And the Creed movies are new, and they look better because they're new. But really, the acting and the writing are really on point. And again, maybe that's a modern thing. Maybe it's not just how it looks, but I've grown accustomed to modern storytelling, and Creed is told in a modern way. Creed 3 being the weakest of the 3, in my opinion. It was nice to pass the torch on to Creed completely in the third one. It does suffer a little bit from not having Rocky in the movie. It feels like it has no heart. It's very compelling as a drama. With the conflict between these two former best friends who are now enemies, it's got a lot of drama. It's like a TV drama. It's gripping. But the heart is missing. The soul is missing. The joy, the optimism is missing. And I know that was a problem that Stallone had with it when he was aware of its production. And maybe, I don't know if he was thinking that before it got made or after it got made, but he thought it was a little too dark. And I kind of feel the same way, although I do like it. I just feel like it's missing a little something. And Donnie, as always, is kind of a douche. It's just his character. Donnie's kind of an immature child. And he lashes out at his supporting characters, and he's not as wise as Rocky is. Rocky often has some kind of stoic wisdom to bestow upon the people around him. And Donnie is just kind of a child. You know, he's immature. He blames everybody for his mistakes. And it's part of his character. It makes him a well-rounded character. He's also kind of annoying, though. So, and great performance from everyone all around. Unfortunately, one of those actors may have a rough time with his career in the future. It was a good movie, though. So, yeah, and a lot of people have a problem with the ethereal, metaphorical fight scene at the end. I liked it when I saw it. After a while, it did kind of bother me because I felt like we were missing part of the fight, because I felt like they weren't showing us what the real fight was like. So when they go into this sort of dream world, then we're not seeing the blow by blow that we would normally see. But after a while, I realized that for any of the fights in the series that go on for many rounds, there's usually, they show you the first couple rounds and the last couple rounds, but then the middle, there's some kind of a montage of some sort. And they have different ways of doing it. In Rocky Balboa, they went to black and white. And, you know, Rocky 1, they had the crossfades and stuff. Rocky 4 was really cool looking. But this was one way of doing a montage. And when I was watching it, there's a part where you can see them fighting each other in real time, and then the camera goes up to the ceiling, and then it goes down, and then it goes back down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and then comes back down. And I think that was when we crossed over from, say, round 3 to round 14 or something like that. So we were watching the round in real time, and then it cut when the camera was up on the ceiling to round 14 or whatever it was, toward the end of the fight. So I think we actually saw all of the blow by blow that happened. They just skipped over the middle rounds. So once I made my peace with that I was actually seeing the fight as it actually occurred, they just skipped over some stuff, I became more okay with that. And Creed 3 would be a great end to the trilogy, just like Rocky 3 was the end of the trilogy, but they can make them indefinitely. So that's number 6. Number 5, Rocky Balboa, the theatrical cut. All right. So Rocky Balboa, I think do I have that? It's one of the best Rocky movies. At least theatrically, it is the best Rocky movie, I think. And it's when Stallone had really crystallized his philosophy and articulated it the best. And there are hints of it in the other movies, like little bits of taking advantage of the opportunities and going for what you want in life and being willing to take the hits and all that. And it was stuff that it was always hinted at in the other ones, but he never said it quite as clearly as he did in Rocky Balboa. So I appreciate that. One downside to this one is this was around the time when they started using real fighters to play the antagonists instead of getting actors and training them how to fight. So unfortunately, Mason Dixon, played by Antonio Carver, I think, he's not a very depthful actor. He's an athlete who is playing a version of himself in the movie. So he doesn't have a lot of charisma as an antagonist, and that is a problem with some of the villains who are played by athletes instead of actors. So he kind of reminds me of Michael Jordan in Space Jam. Like, he's a real athlete. You can tell that he's not very comfortable reading lines of dialogue, though. So, Paulie gets to shine in this one because they got rid of Adrian at this point. And the relationship with his son is really important to this movie. So I think it was important to dig a hole for Rocky and have him climb his way out of it, to have kind of a reboot of the original. Is sort of a, what do you call it, a requel or something like that, where it's a sequel, but it's basically just redoing what the first one did, just like almost a generation later. And in retrospect, I respect Rocky V for being the pivot point that leads in this more interesting direction for the Rocky franchise, because we saw him get everything he wanted in life, and then we start seeing him lose it. And that's an interesting thing. It's interesting to see Rocky lose all the things that he got, and not just the things, but the people in his life that he's lost. And that's when it really gets existential and interesting and not just materialistic. Whereas I feel like the first 3 were very materialistic. So once you have that really depressing Rocky V, which was not a great movie to end on, but perhaps a good kind of Empire Strikes Back type thing to tee up Rocky Balboa that didn't come to fruition until 16 years later, I think it does function as a sort of all is lost, dark night of the soul moment for Rocky, so that he can come back and have a triumphant return. So the 6th one really kind of recaptures the magic of the original and refines it a little bit. One of the weakest aspects of it, I think, is the Marie subplot, because it's kind of a love story, but not really. So they're just friends, but it's not really going anywhere, and it's pseudo-romantic, and it always kind of just feels like filler. It's cute, but kind of odd. So that part just doesn't quite work for me, but the rest of the movie is fantastic. Now, number 4, Rocky Balboa, the Ultimate Director's Cut. This is, in my opinion, the superior version of Rocky Balboa, and unlike the other, like, assembly cut, or what's it called, the work print of Rocky 5 or the director's cut of Rocky 4, this is not like a totally new edit. It's not replacement scenes, except for one of them. And it's not a reimagining of anything. It's basically just the theatrical version with the deleted scenes put back in. That's it. So, for the most part, if you have the DVD, I don't know. Do people have DVDs anymore? If you have the access to the deleted scenes for Rocky Balboa, you've seen 90% 90% of what they've added back into the director's cut. That being said, there was at least one scene that I had never seen before, maybe two scenes that I had never seen before. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. This was not from the deleted scenes. This is new footage. And I found it really interesting. And they just dig that hole deeper and deeper for Rocky Balboa to climb out of. So, as much as they do that in the theatrical version, he's even more depressed. He's even lonelier in the director's cut than he was before. And you see him desperately trying to make connections, like with Steps, Marie's kid. And it's kind of foreshadowing to his relationship with Adonis later on, where he's kind of trying to have a family in the absence of his real family. And Paulie's got a great scene in it where he's talking about how he wasted his life. And it's really sad because it's the opposite of what happened to Rocky. And it's not about opportunities. It's not about things just happened to go the right way for Rocky. It's that Paulie didn't do anything. He just worked at a factory his whole life and he wasted it. He's in his 50s, 60s at that point, and he feels like he wasted his whole life. And that's sad because some people do. They go their whole life and they never do anything that they wanted to do. I don't even know what Paulie wanted to do, but it wasn't that. So that's why it's sad. I keep hitting the camera. But yeah, so I think that the director's cut is better than the theatrical version. One thing that is puzzling to me, though, about it is there's one deleted scene that they did not put back in the movie. And I don't get it because it seems like it should be there. It seems like they just forgot to do it. And it's the scene where Paulie moves out. So in the theatrical cut, I don't even think we get an impression that Rocky and Paulie live together. So that's another thing they added back in, is Paulie is Rocky's roommate. And there's a deleted scene that's not in the director's cut where Paulie moves out. And that's not in the director's cut. But in the director's cut, there's a scene where Paulie asks if he can move back in. I'm like, move back in? When did you move out? Like, it's weird that that's not there. And I feel like to really have the ultimate director's cut, you got to put that other scene back in where he moves out, because it's such a sad scene, because you just see how lonely Rocky is when he finds out that Paulie's leaving. And Paulie treats him like crap. And Rocky is still so sad that he's leaving. So, yeah. If you have access to the director's cut, in my opinion, that's the better version of the film. Number 3, Creed. Creed. The original Creed. This, in my opinion, takes Rocky Balboa and levels it up just a little bit. It's a little bit more refined. It's a little bit more focused. They take the attention away from Rocky and put it on an actual fighter who is up and coming, the way that Rocky was. And Rocky still gets a lot of screen time in this one, but rightfully so. This is like Rocky 5, except Rocky's not the main character because he's retired. You know, one of the problems with Rocky 5 was that he was still the main character, still got all the screen time, but he wasn't a fighter anymore. He was just the manager. So the guy who's doing all the fighting, the antagonist ultimately, doesn't get much screen time, but he's the one going on the journey. He's the one going on the physical journey. And Rocky really doesn't have much to do. He's just the manager. So I think people wanted to see him train and fight and do all that stuff. And by making him a supporting character, we get to have Adonis at the center of it doing the actual boxing, which is kind of what these movies are about. Not really, but kind of. They're kind of boxing movies, I would say. I think that's fair, even if there's more to it than that. So I do think that one thing that bothered me about Rocky Balboa is the lack of boxing and the lack of training. Most of the Rocky movies, like I said, the first half is his personal life, his everyday life, and the second half is training. And it culminates in a montage that leads into the final fight. Rocky Balboa was always kind of weird to me because there was no training at all for the second half of the movie until the montage. So it was like he's doing nothing, and then there's a montage, and then there's the final fight. I'm like, what? Like, that was just kind of abrupt. I don't know. There's not much boxing in this boxing movie. And they did add a little bit of that back in for the director's cut, a little bit of a sparring session. So that helped make it feel more like a boxing movie. Creed is a boxing movie, and we see the training, and he's doing it kind of the whole time. But then you get the cancer subplot with Rocky, and that is some of the best stuff that Stallone ever did. His speech about how, if I could spend one more day with my wife, I would die a happy man. Right then. Not going to happen. It's heartbreaking. It gets me every time. So it's got some of the best Rocky stuff in it, and Adonis is a compelling lead who, again, kind of a whiny child when push comes to shove. Literally, pushing and shoving occur, and he's just kind of immature about it. So the love story, again, to me, is a little bit lackluster. I feel like that's a weak point in a lot of these. I know that people are crazy about the love story in these Rocky movies, but to me, they're often the weakest part. And it seemed like it was a predictable rehash of the Rocky and Adrian storyline, but an improvement for this modern era. She's not just there to support him. It's mutual. She's got her own thing going on. She's a singer, and it's a great subplot because you can put the two together. You got a fighter over here and a singer over here, and they can run on parallel tracks. So when Donnie retires from boxing, Bianca also has to retire from singing because she has progressive hearing loss and can't do it anymore. So it's a great way to have a theme reflected back on him and how they support each other, and they each have their own dreams, and they move back to LA because that's where the record labels are and all that. So there's a give and take. It's much more balanced of a relationship than Rocky and Adrian was. So I know for the people who are all about the Rocky and Adrian relationship, it's kind of a bummer to hear that from me. But I do feel that Adonis and Bianca have a better example of what a healthy relationship should look like. So, number 2, Creed 2. Yes, I think this one's a little bit better than the original. Not everybody agrees with me on that point, but this was always, to me, an example of a good movie that uses a bad movie as backstory. And it was a reason why I always thought that you should not just reboot franchises every time you make a mistake. You can use the bad ones to serve as a springboard for good ones. Now, I'm mostly speaking to the critics' response to Rocky IV. I know the audiences liked it, and I know that Rocky IV is the highest grossing of the Rocky series, I think, still. So a lot of people liked Rocky IV, but the critics didn't. And I was on the side of the critics at the time, and still am for the theatrical cut. But Creed 2 takes that backstory and uses it to write a better version of that story, Kirk. So they flesh out the Ivan Drago character. They flesh out his son. It becomes kind of a revenge story where Donnie is trying to avenge his father, and it digs up all kinds of stuff for Rocky and how he feels like he failed. Again, Donnie acting kind of like an immature brat when he loses. He was disqualified. No, wait. Drago was disqualified. So, Donnie wins, but he really lost. He feels he lost. I just feel like Victor Drago is a more impressive villain than Conlon was in the first Creed. And there's just a lot there. There's a lot of weight that comes from bringing Ivan Drago back. And by the end of it, I'm rooting for Adonis and Victor. I don't even want them to be fighting. I want Victor to be happy. I want Adonis to be happy. I want them to move on because this has nothing to do with them. This is a conflict between their fathers. It has nothing to do with them. And neither of them really want to be there. They're both kind of pressured into it by other people. People are pushing Donnie to fight Drago, and people are pushing Victor to fight Creed. Victor Creed. What? Sabretooth? And they don't even want to be there, really. They're just doing it to make everybody else happy. And I love that in the end, it's Ivan Drago who throws in the towel and accepts his son whether he wins or loses. It's perfect. And it's an end for Rocky's character because he's reunited with his son. And Adonis goes to the grave of his father. And so it's father-son drama all around. Makes me cry every time. And finally, number 1 on the list, if you haven't figured it out yet, Rocky IV, Rocky versus Drago, the ultimate director's cut. This is going to be a controversial choice for some people because if you're really attached to the theatrical version, you're probably not going to like the director's cut. But on the other hand, if you didn't like the theatrical version, there's a good chance that you might like the director's cut. Good example here is the critics' opinions. The Rotten Tomatoes score for the director's cut is significantly higher than that of the theatrical cut. And I understand why. Now, the first time I saw it, I didn't like it. It was unfamiliar. It felt, the stuff that I was attached to, the stuff that I did like from Rocky IV was changed, and I didn't like that. And I was like, okay, fine, get rid of the robot. That's fine. And, get rid of, some of the other stuff. That's cool. But there was like weird stuff that they took out that I didn't think they needed to take out. And there's stuff that I wanted to see that was missing. But everything changed once I decided to stop comparing the two versions and do a Rocky marathon. And instead of watching the theatrical cut of Rocky IV, put in the director's cut instead and just see how it slots in between 3 and 5. And it works insanely well as a bridge between 3 and 5. And it's widescreen now, so they've chopped off the top and the bottom of the frame. It looks very cinematic. It's in high definition. It looks very new and modern. And it has specifically been changed on a shot-by-shot basis. Stallone literally went into the editing room and changed the dailies that were used. He took the footage, the raw footage that was shot on the day, and put in new takes of scenes. It's a completely new re-edit for the most part. A lot of it's the same, but he went back to the drawing board with a lot of it. And he was smart because, in a 1:8:5 aspect ratio, if you chop off the top and bottom of the frame, he knew that if it was a close-up, you would lose part of the actors' faces. So in a lot of cases, he swapped out a close-up or a medium shot for a wide shot, knowing that he was going to chop off the top and bottom of the frame to make it more aesthetically appealing. The director's cut is more subtle. The takes they use are different. Ivan Drago is more humanized in the director's cut, which is foreshadowing for Creed 2. You can see that in in the theatrical cut, he seems like a monster. He seems like a Terminator. He seems like he has no soul because he's a filthy communist, right? But in the director's cut, they make him human. He's Captain Russia. He's a propaganda tool, and he doesn't like it. He doesn't even want to be there, just like Victor Drago didn't want to be there. Rocky doesn't want to fight him, really. He's, it was Apollo Creed who wanted to fight him. Rocky is just trying to deal with his own guilt by the end of it. And Drago, he didn't really want to fight either one of them. He was pushed into it by his government. And at the end of it, I just love it as a film fan, just the experiment of taking a film like Rocky IV, which is just a commercial success, and restructuring it to be more like Rocky Balboa, which was, up until that point, I think the best Rocky film. But when you take the commercial success of Rocky IV and retool it to make it more like Rocky Balboa, you find the heart again. They put back a lot of not put back, it was never there. They put in a lot of the original music from the first Rocky movie and the second and the third, So they still have the Vince DiCola score for the Russia stuff, but that original Rocky music is there. And that really gives it some heart. The robot is gone, which is great. And at the end, Rocky's speech is toned down significantly. So it's not suggesting that they have overcome their differences, that they have overcome racism or xenophobia or whatever it is he was thinking, like, I've seen a lot of change in here tonight. Like, Rocky IV always struck me as like it was written like a bad support group scene where everyone in the crowd changes overnight. And even the leaders of Russia are like, and that's how the Cold War ended, obviously, if you've read your history. But in the director's cut, the Russian leaders stand up quietly and just leave because they're pissed. They're not cheering for Rocky. They don't like that he just did that. They don't like that Drago went rogue. So Drago is an individual in the director's cut, and it's much more nuanced. Drago is not a villain. He is a propaganda tool that's manipulated by the real villains of the movie. So I think that not only is the director's cut of Rocky IV my favorite Rocky movie and or Creed movie, it's also often, my favorite film of all time. Again, as a writer, as a filmmaker, as an editor, I find it fascinating what they can do with the footage they have to create something brand new. So some people don't like it. If you're attached to the theatrical version, you're probably not going to like it. But if you're open-minded and you are willing to see a different version of it, and you're not that crazy about Rocky IV, as is, Rocky IV, Rocky versus Drago, the ultimate director's cut, may just be for you. So that's it. That is the Rocky and Creed movies ranked. I'm Trevor Meyer. Go ahead and like and subscribe and all that social media stuff. I don't even know what goes on down there. Leave some comments. What do you think about this list? How do you feel about these different versions of the movie? Rocky V Workprint, have you seen it? Was it watchable for you? Which version of Rocky IV, which version of Rocky Balboa do you like? How do you feel about the original Rocky in retrospect? Now that you've matured as an audience, I assume. Leave your comments down below. See you next time. I'm serious. I'm leaving this in. I'm going to have to cut this out.